Your name right. Okay. Be ready to rock and roll here in just a second. Okay, thanks for joining us this afternoon for the Minot Area Chamber EDC Government Affairs Committee Candidate Forum for the Minot City Council. This is our second forum ahead of the June 2024 primary. My name is Mark Lyman. I'm an employee of the Minot Area Chamber EDC and a member of the MACEDC Government Affairs Committee, and we will be the moderator for this forum. I want to thank everyone for tuning in online, whether you're live or whether you're watching this on delay. If you are watching live online and would like to propose a question that could be asked of the candidates, of all the candidates tonight, please feel free to drop that question in the chat or comment section of the Facebook page or YouTube page that you are viewing. I think by my latest estimate, we're up to over 60 questions. I will not guarantee that we will get to all of them today, so I do apologize ahead of time. We have asked the candidates to be here until 5:30 tonight. I want to be respectful of that time. We may push it a little bit beyond that, but we want to be respectful of that 5:30 clock. We have 7 candidates running for 3 open seats for the Minot City Council. 2 of our candidates are incumbents, 5 are challengers. In alphabetical order, they are as follows, and hopefully I pronounce everyone's name right: Mike Blessum, Scott Burlingame, Rob Fuller, Mike Gietzen, Stephen Padragula, Scott Samuelson, and Leif Schneider. A few quick ground rules for this afternoon's forum. We do ask that the candidates not address each other with their responses, but they address the audience here today or myself as a moderator. Please stay focused on the questions that are being asked. In light of our great turnout, we have also asked the candidates to keep their responses to 1 minute or less. 30 seconds would be great. I know that some of these questions are a lot more than a 30-second response. We are going to ask the question of every single candidate, so each of you gets a chance to respond, so you can respond how you want to respond. Thanks again to the candidates for choosing to participate in a forum that will allow voters an opportunity to get to know you and your positions. As well, thank you to the City of Minot for allowing us use of the City Hall and the council chambers here today. Let's get to know our candidates first. So we've given each candidate about a minute, and we'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for City Council. Mike Blessum, we go with you first.
Thanks, Mark. I'd like to thank the Minot Chamber for this opportunity, thank my opponents in the race for their willingness to step up and join the fray. My name's Mike Blessum, and I'd like to be your next alderman. Minot has been my home nearly all my life. I was born and raised here. I met my wife Sherry at Minot High in 10th grade social studies. We raised our kids here. We own businesses here. We love our city and its people. We're at a crossroads in our city, state, and country. Generations of people have been trained to believe the government will take care of them. This mentality has a profound effect on our citizens. Hardworking people are pushed to the brink by high taxes and government regulation. We're asked to subsidize the business ventures of large companies through tax breaks instead of keeping our hard-earned funds for our own investments and improvements. Our community survey results are clear. Our residents want us to focus on providing excellent fundamental services and reducing the property tax burden. I pledge to do my part to keep our city government focused on these items. Folks, we can do better with new leadership and a new vision. I would appreciate your vote to give me the chance to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mike. Scott Burlingame, you'll be next.
First off, Mark, I'd like to thank yourself and the Chamber for putting on this and giving us all an opportunity to kind of share our visions and what we're doing. I'd like to start off by thanking the voters who elected me in November of 2022 to fill an unexpired term of our current mayor, Tom Ross, on the City Council. Serving the people of Minot has been an absolute pleasure of mine. It's been a wonderful opportunity to learn so much and to work with so many and to learn so much about how city government works and about the needs and the desires of the people of Minot. A little bit about me. I've spent over 30 years now working in the nonprofit community. The last 14, I've been the executive director of Independence Incorporated, which is a disability rights organization that helps people with disabilities, people living with the effects of aging, to live independently in the community, and a vast majority of those people live in the community of Minot. So I'm very well in touch with the lives of people within this community. I'm running because I still have more work to do. I'm not a traditional politician. I definitely don't live by or die by what happens in the political world out there. That makes me a little bit different than a lot of candidates. I'm running because I love this community, because it's been exceptionally good to me and the people I love, and that I want to give back.
Okay, thank you. Scott, Rob Fuller, you're next. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Rob Fuller. I'm excited to be here today as a candidate for City Council. I'm really passionate about our community and its future, and that's why I'm running to help serve. I think all of us can agree there's some issues that we need to address within the city, and we're hoping to affect some of that change. I'm not a career politician. I'm one of you guys. I'm a neighbor, business owner, friend, family member. I was born and raised in Minot. After college, I moved away to Colorado for a number of years. I started my banking career out there. I met my wife, Katie. We moved back here to Minot in 2012 to raise our family and work. We're thrilled to call Minot our home, and having lived here 36 years, I believe I have a pretty good sense of what is important to the citizens in our community. I'm not here to make promises. I'm here to try and make a difference. With my background in commercial banking and now running my own business, I think I bring a pretty unique perspective to the table. I'm dedicated to serving you guys with transparency and integrity. It's our community, and it's at a crossroads, as Mike said. Our shared future is at stake, and so I'm asking for your support, your ideas, your input, and your vote. Together, we can make Minot a place that we're all proud to call home.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, you're next, please.
All right. I'm Mike Geetson. I also am born and raised in Minot here. I thought about running in 2010 when Ernie Madolin decided to retire. That year I was getting married in May, and the election in June I opted not to do it. I'm glad I didn't. At the time I was probably not as prepared as I am today. I had a little opportunity now to grow. I recently just took a new position, had a successful career with Ryan Family Dealerships, moved up to SRT in a good spot, feeling rejuvenated, got excited, decided here as of late to jump in. I'm excited about the opportunity. I have lots of ideas, but I also always found myself kind of getting in a leadership role. I don't mind being when I volunteer for something, I don't mind jumping on a board or being the president or taking some of those roles. The reason I'm doing this is I feel like it's maybe time for a fresh set of eyes. I like to find common ground. If you're looking for a person that's going to stand up here and tell you all the answers and tell you that I got everything figured out, I'm not your guy. All I want is a seat at the table, and look forward to the opportunity if I get elected to see if I can make a difference. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Stephen Padragula.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Padragula. I'm a clinical psychologist in full-time private practice for the past 35 years. I've lived in Minot for 45 years, raised a family here, proud to call this home. I think the biggest reason I'm running, two reasons really. The biggest one is to serve the community. I think I have the experience and the independence and hopefully the good judgment to do what's best for all the citizens of Minot, not just this year, but into the future. I've had the privilege of serving the citizens for 16 years on the council out of the past 25 years, so I've been on and off. So I've had the perspective of being on the inside and being on the outside. I would stress that Minot is a large organization, large community. We have 50,000 people. We have 454 full-time employees, a budget of $200 million. I spend 2 to 3 days a week on city business. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to know, and there are a lot of competing interests and needs to balance and try to make things right overall. The second reason I'm running is a more personal reason, and it's to give back as service to the community. My parents were political refugees to the United States, and they owe their lives, not just their livelihoods or their education, but their lives to our country. And I feel a sense of obligation to give something back. I don't have the ambition or the talent to serve in Washington. I'd like to think I have the dedication and the courage and the hard work to serve here. So those are the two reasons I'm running, and I would certainly ask for your support.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott Samuelson, you're next.
Okay, my name is Scott Samuelson. I'm a licensed master plumber with the North Dakota State Plumbing Board. I graduated from Bismarck High School, which is where I met my wife, Connie. I attended Dickinson State College before moving to Minot 35 years ago. Connie and I have 2 children. Both were born in Minot, graduated from Minot High School. Our daughter graduated from, and our son is currently attending Minot State University. Minot is home to my kids, and although I did not grow up here, it has become my home. I am running for City Council because Minot needs a change in leadership. We need to do a better job of encouraging participation and engagement with our citizens, and not dismissing their concerns. We can do this by inspiring more input at our city council meetings, not leaving citizens feeling unwelcome and rejected. I believe we can do better together as a community, and I would thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And last but not least, Leif Snyder, please.
My name is Leif Snyder. I was born and raised here. Not to say that anybody else moving here can't contribute to the community just as much. I left twice to come back because it's home. I grew up playing hockey, actually with Mr. Blessum down there. I volunteered as a coach for about 17 years. I actually started the MSC women's hockey team here. I've always agreed that citizens need to participate. If you don't voice your opinion, you'll never be listened to. And quite frankly, I'm running because I've had enough. The July 5th, 2022 City Council meeting, I spoke to council and pointed out that Magic Fund guidelines were being violated. Now, I have to admit, I like the fact that they rewrote the guidelines, but now I have a huge problem with the new conflict of interest. It's their vote 7-0 to approve the fact that a Chamber EDC board member can receive Magic funds as well as a sitting council member, I just think is wrong. So it's that kind of stuff. That's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you, Leif. We'll start with our next question. This one we'll start with Scott, and we'll go down the line. So that everybody knows, Minot Area Chamber EDC's 5-year strategic plan is focused on 5 pillars: economic development, community development, workforce development, member investor services, and military support. So the next 5 questions will focus on those 5 strategic pillars. First question, and Scott Burlingame, you start us off. What City of Minot programs or efforts will you keep or change to improve the economic well-being of the individuals and businesses in our community?
I think that right now we're at a pivotal moment in history where many of the economic development tools that we've used over time, we need to take a real look at. For far too long, it was all about trying to recruit businesses into our community. But right now, we need to look at it as how do we recruit people into our community? How do we get workforce issues, which I know is going to be another question. I think that with each of the economic development tools that exist, we have to continue to ask that question as much as possible. How can we use this economic development tool to make Minot into a better place to live, work, and play for people with disabilities? It's an extraordinarily complex answer, and it's not going to be summed up in a 30-second response. But my priority when it comes to economic development tools is going to be workforce over everything.
Okay, thank you. Scott, again, the question, Rob, is what City of Minot programs or efforts will you keep or change to improve the economic well-being of the individuals and businesses in our community?
Well, without knowing every specific program and effort that they're doing, I think as a whole, what we need to do as a city is sit down and take a look at the funding and the programs and the things we're using. Because as Scott said, one of the biggest issues we have here in Minot, and every business owner will tell you this, is we can't draw workforce to the city. Why can't we draw workforce to the city? Is it because we're not giving enough money to EDC to bring those businesses in? I don't believe that's the case. I believe it's because it's expensive to live in Minot, and most people making between $10 and $30 an hour can't afford some of the things that they need to afford to live in the city of Minot. So again, a 30-second answer to a big question. What we have to do is sit down and look at everything as a whole and decide what is working and what isn't working, and the things that aren't working definitely need to be changed.
Okay, thank you. Mike Geetson, next on that same question.
Okay, thank you. I was along the same lines of Rob saying that I don't know that I can tell you specifically what programs or efforts that I would change. I'd like to take a good hard look at to see what it takes. Is Minot a city that's easy to do business with? Is it all about the money? Is it all about a tax break? I sure hope not. I think there's other things that we can offer. There's good people here. If that's the ticket, I don't know. But like I said, I'd just like to find out what it's like to do business with the city of Minot, and then hold those people that do business with us, make them accountable, and have integrity. So.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve, you're next on that same question.
I think the key is growing our own. I think Scott's right. We focus too much, well, probably appropriately, on bringing business in. I think we need to grow business here. That means encouraging an entrepreneurial spirit as soon as people are in school, not in college or trade or technical school, but when they're growing up in high school. I think we also need to pay much more attention to workforce issues, particularly in terms of daycare and quality of life issues. That includes recreation, that includes a good school system, that includes safety, clean air, all those sorts of things. I think in the future it's going to be quality of life and safety that are going to draw people and keep people in places like Minot and are going to drive them away from big cities. So I think basically more of the same with more of an emphasis on accountability, transparency, and common human quality of life issues. And entrepreneurship, I think, would be the big one.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott, then, same question. I'll repeat it one more time. What City of Minot programs or efforts will you keep or change to improve the economic well-being of the individuals and businesses in our community?
I would say we definitely have to look at the tools that we're using for economic development, because they're not working. They're not working because Minot is actually losing population rather than gaining it. Our population today is about the same as it was in 2014. And so we need to look at that. We're spending a lot of money on economic development that hasn't been working. And I believe we have to look at our tax structure. That is also what is keeping people out of Minot and moving from Minot. And part of it has to do with we're spending money on economic development that I don't think we should be spending.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, you're next on the same question.
Well, you can't talk about economic development without mentioning the Magic Fund. Now, the goofy part is there was a ballot initiative. If we can learn anything from Bismarck, I think it's not to say poo-poo to the people who voted it and say you don't know what you're talking about. So as a council, I don't know how you just say, okay, let's get rid of it. I think that's not the obvious answer. Now, you can redefine what economic development is. That's kind of how we got the facade grant program. That's comes from the same source.
Okay. Anything else? You got a few more seconds?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike, finish us off on this last question.
All right, great. I guess I'll get a little more specific about some of the programs that are going on right now. So the Magic Fund, TIF funding, the Renaissance zones, all those things need to be revisited. There's no question about that. It sounds like there's pretty good consensus across the board here on that, which is great. The one thing that I will say, though, that I do appreciate a lot that the city has done through the chamber is the Task Force 21 process. You know, yesterday we had a great symposium that was put on by the chamber talking about the importance of Minot Air Force Base to this community, and actually, even more importantly, the mission that Minot Air Force Base provides to our country as a whole. And to me, that's a wonderful thing that we need to do everything that we can to support. So we need to have a lot of different things that need to be done going forward. We need to redevelop and revamp our entire economic development world. But one of the things I love is that Task Force 21 program.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And thank you to the candidates. You've stuck to about 30 or 40 seconds, so I appreciate it. We'll get through at least 5 or 6 questions tonight. So this next question starts with Rob Fuller, and then we'll go around the room again like normal. Rob, what role will you play through your elected position, if you were elected, in developing a community and region that continues to thrive and grow?
Well, again, if I'm lucky enough to be elected to the city council, I think my role, with my background and my history, is going to be to look at line items within our budget, because I believe our budget is bloated. I think there's a lot of wasteful spending that's being done. And again, when I say that, I don't mean wasteful and necessary, but is it something we should be doing right now, right? So I think my goal, if I get on there, to make Minot a thriving community, because right now, and I'm going to reference the satisfaction survey. The satisfaction survey that came out at the 2 city council meetings ago pretty much showed that Minot isn't a thriving community, and there's a lot of people upset in this community and don't feel that it's a good place to live. We need to get it back to where it was, where people believe this is a great place to live and raise a family, that they believe the city listens to them and the city is doing what's best for them, because an 18% rating and a 24% rating in those last 2 questions from respondents for the city doesn't show a very good response from the community. So I think we need to turn that around. I think we need to have the people talking to us as their aldermen and city councilmen and telling us what they want. The city needs to ask for input, which I don't believe they do right now. So that's where I would start.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike, same question then, I'll repeat it. What role will you play through your elected position in developing a community and region that continues to thrive and grow?
Well, I was doing so good until this last 30 seconds, but this is where I was going to go with it. So those that read the Minot Daily, I said, God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I firmly believe in it. And that was where I was going to go with it, is just to listen. And I think that's what people want. They want someone to listen. And it's not about just listening for complaints only. Listening with solutions provided, in my mind, carries more weight. But in my opinion, to do a positive impact, I'm going to listen and hear what people have to say, whether they're on my side or not on my side. I think engaging in good conversation, tough conversations, asking tough questions, they go both ways. And so that'll be how I'm going to impact it positively, is I'm going to listen.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve, same question, please.
I think it's to continue being a good role model, to try to be transparent, to try to ask tough questions, to try to explain myself when I have opinions on things. I've listened a long time, and I've listened hard. Last time I ran for office, I knocked on 10,000 doors, and I spoke with many thousands of people, and I took what they said seriously. Didn't mean I necessarily agreed with what they wanted or felt that was best, but I listened. I went out, I saw people in their neighborhoods, on their front stoops, in their front yards, and I think we need to start that way and keep that way, not just sit here on the council, but actually go out in the community and listen to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Same question, Scott, and I'll repeat it. What role will you play through your elected position in developing a community and region that continues to thrive and grow?
I'll have to agree with Steve. I think we do need to get out in the community more. As a city council and city leaders, I think we need to get out in the community more. And part of listening is also understanding where the people are coming from. I've mentioned at city council meetings a couple different times about listening. And I watch response, and I got some pretty interesting comments from council members. And I just think we have to treat people with respect. And they know what they're looking for and they know what they want. We just need to listen and understand where they're coming from.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, same question.
Now, in order to sit up here, we had to gather, 300 signatures? I didn't go to events. I went the old-fashioned way. I went and knocked on doors as soon as the weather got warm enough. And I can honestly say I do not think that the current council listens. People are not happy. I used to call it apathy. It's actually turned into frustration and anger. So not just listening, but communicating back to those people what you want to do with the city is vital. I don't necessarily think that it's our role as a council to always look for economic growth. I want to get back to basic services and let the growth be what the growth is. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum, same question.
So I'll agree with a lot of the sentiments. I do think that there's things that we can do better to to facilitate the conversation with the public. One of those that I'll point to, I spend time in front of the legislature working on bills and testifying on those. The interactions that happen there, I think, are much more conducive to a real conversation than what we see at the city council, because there's a true interaction. There's questions back and forth. There's that interaction going on. But I'll also say that at the end of the day, one of the main roles that I want to bring to it is that the council actually just needs to get out of the way. Our city and our people are what makes this city a great place to live and a great place to be. We need to lower the regulations. We need to make sure that people are able to make their own way in the world without getting held down by high taxes and high regulation.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Scott?
So it's interesting going this late in it, I've changed my answer about 3 times. So here's where I'm at right now, Mark. The reality is that a lot of great points were brought up here today. First off, I agree, there's always more that we can do. Those of us that are on council, this isn't our full-time job. We have full-time jobs, full-time livelihoods outside of council. We need to continuously be engaged and to listen as much as possible. And I can tell you that in the time that I've sat up there, I've heard everything that anybody said to me, and I've listened, even if I don't agree. I actually really appreciate people that maybe bring me a different angle or are not. But that's hard to do too in today's political climate where everybody's on fire all the time and everybody looks for as if there's some sort of a hidden agenda to not listen. I think that what I can do and what I've got a history of doing throughout my career is bringing people together, to listen, to get topics together, to bring people in. And in fact, I think the city has done some good stuff. We can do more. We did the citizen survey, as was talked about earlier. We also brought in some consultants to engage people from various backgrounds, to listen, and to just engage as much as possible. The chamber does a great job of that. So the more that we can do to just really, really put our feelers out there and listen and gather information, the better it is for everybody, because none of us know everything, including me.
Okay, perfect, thank you. We'll start on the next round of questions. This one we'll start with Mike Geetson. What can the city employees and elected officials of the city do to support the development of current employees, whether they're employed at the city or not, and the continued attraction of new workforce to our region? So what can city employees and elected officials do to continue attracting new workforce to our region?
That's a long question, but I think I got it. So one of the things I was thinking about when you were saying that is I did a little back history here in the last little while, and I was reading some of the things from the chamber, and their document from March says that unemployment in the city has gone up is up to 2.8%, and it was in December of last year it was 1.7%, and so I'm a little concerned with that. It's a high number of unemployment, and I guess I would lean on working with the chamber and finding out what's the answer, or the EDC, what's the reason for that? What's happening? They're the ones doing the research. It would be asking the questions on what can we do about it. Is it a culture thing? I'm nervous that it might be trending that way potentially. I don't know, but we want to make sure we have a workforce for these businesses to hire, and so it's a little concerning and a tough question for sure.
Okay, thank you. Mike, Steve, you're next on that question. What can the city employees and elected officials of the city do to support the development of current employees and the continued attraction of new workforce to our region?
I think for starters would be to make it more attractive for our kids to stay here. That means in terms of being a more welcoming, more respectful, more accepting community of people who maybe have different ideas, who maybe are more forward-looking. I think part of it is making sure that the quality of life stays good so people hear and understand that this is a pleasant place to live. And it's not just a job, it's a place to live, to a place to raise your family. I think the third would be to support more vocational training opportunities so people have the chance to move ahead in their careers or switch to other careers and learn practical down-to-earth skills like plumbing, for example. I think we need to have a broader range of services available in the community and a broader range of occupations, and to support the current economic developments we've been undertaking. But again, I would focus the quality of life and keeping our kids here and making it more attractive for others to come back.
Okay, thank you. Scott, same question.
I would say we definitely have to have the quality of life for our citizens, and I think just helping each other out when it comes to when they want to come here, to be able to inform them what Minot has to offer. But we also have to look at what we're doing for the people as far as the taxes and other regulations that we're putting on people, whether they really want to come here and stay. And I think we have probably some of the best city employees of any city in Minot or in the state, and I really believe that that they can help each other out and help other people in the community as well.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, same question.
Now, are you referring to city employees or workforce development across the whole?
What can the city employees and elected officials of the city do to support the development of current employees and the continued attraction of new workforce to our region?
First of all, the demand for employees, entry-level stuff is already there. We've all been to places that are short of help. But the hiccup comes, who's going to move here for entry-level work when rent is as high as it is due to the tax situation? There's no net gain for people to come here and do that. That's obviously one hurdle. As far as city employees, there's only so much you can do for growth. Within the city itself, I would like to see the HR department and policy be followed. With the exception of somebody, or excuse me, I will correct Mike on one thing. I am actually not a full-time employee. I'm actually visually impaired. I only have about 10% in one eye. So I have more time than most to talk to other people. And I'm sorry, things are not all rosy and perfect. I think there's a huge morale problem within the city of Minot for their employees. That has to be addressed. We can limit turnover if we can finally address that.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mr. Blessam, the question is, what can the city employees and elected officials for the city do to support the development of current employees and the continued attraction of new workforce to our region?
So just like the private sector, the city needs to invest in its employees and in their growth and making sure that they're equipped to do their jobs. We run an accounting office. We need to continue to invest in our accountants to make sure that they're able to perform their duties and do them well for their clients. But beyond that, it's the same answer that I'm probably going to give a lot of times. The city needs to get out of the way. Thinking that we can engineer our workforce and make the community into something from an engineered perspective just isn't realistic. And it's asking more of our city and its staff than is possible. What the city needs to do is get out of the way, lower taxes, get regulations down, and the private sector will take care of these things.
Okay, thank you. Mike, Scott, same question?
So a couple of things. First off, I think that, anything that the city can do, the city's made a tremendous amount of improvement, but we can do better at ensuring that the city of Minot is open for business. So when it comes to regulation, when it comes to filling out forms, for some reason today I ended up watching some YouTube videos that are out there just showing how you can fill out forms if you're applying for different permits and stuff in the city of Minot. We need more of that. That is what we need to be open to business and so much more. But I also want to use this opportunity to talk about something that we can do as a city and as a community, which is one of my primary issues, which is that we need to improve childcare. Since I was elected, we put together a committee on childcare. It's a good example where we brought together parents, we brought together providers, we brought together subject matter experts, brought together city staff, and we've been talking about how we can do this. And the city can't do everything in this, but that doesn't mean the city shouldn't do anything. We can repurpose some economic development dollars. We can use some economic development staff to help make it easier to expand and grow childcare with our community. That is something we can do. Now, in the last week, I've had one person who I wanted to hire in my job who couldn't do it because she didn't have childcare. And yesterday I had somebody walk up to me who said, I'm worried about if I'm going to be able to keep my job this summer because I don't have childcare. Those are real examples of people that want to work in this community, and you better darn well believe that we can do better and we should do better on that topic.
Okay, thank you. Scott, Rob, finish us off on this question, please.
All right, well, I'll answer from the perspective of a city candidate rather than a city employee. I mean, the city employees, we're going to do what we can do to have them help us along the way. But as a city candidate, what do we need to do to attract workforce? We got to lower the cost of living in Minot, North Dakota. And I'm going to agree down there with Leif. Half of it has to do with the tax burden, right? The property tax burden that everybody feels. We're getting crushed by the federal government and inflation and what they're doing to the economy right now. And what has the city of Minot done for us over the last 5 years? They've continued to raise property taxes for every little thing that they want to do. That's their way to bail out everything. And so we need to stop that. We need to make it an affordable place to live so you can get your childcare workers to come in here. You can get your $10 to $20 restaurant workers to come in here and live. People that can't afford to live here aren't going to afford to work here. You know, if you have a choice to go to Bismarck or you go to Minot, you could move to one of two places. We pay higher property tax. They have more amenities in Bismarck. Which way are you going? You're going to move to Bismarck. And so that's what's hurting us. I believe it's the cost of living in Minot, so.
Okay, thank you, Rob. We're going to start a new question now. This will start with Steve. From a city perspective, of course, understanding that the city is very different from the Park District, from the public schools, and from Ward County, because they're all very different taxing entities with different responsibilities. But from a city of Minot perspective, what would you change and or improve from a quality of life standpoint that will assist existing or new businesses or existing or new residents to Minot?
I would agree that the primary emphasis needs to be on the basics, kind of like reading, writing, and arithmetic in school. Decent streets, safe water, safe streets, good fire protection, things like that. I think actually Leif and some other people may be right on this, that maybe the city needs to kind of let the natural process take place and focus on the things that people rely on government for. Again, the things that protect us, that protect our property, that make this a decent place. I think a lot of it, too, is partnering with these other organizations like the school system and the park board to make sure we're working in the same direction. We finally are having regular meetings of the liaison committee, which includes all these different governmental entities. And I think we need to be doing more talking with each other and planning together.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott, the same question from the city's viewpoint. What would you change and/or improve from a quality of life angle that will assist existing or new businesses or new residents to Minot?
I would have to agree with a lot what's been said, and I believe for the quality of life, it's what it costs to live in Minot. Our property taxes, as somebody else had said, there are towns, of course, that use specials and stuff, but of all the 5 major cities in North Dakota, Minot has the highest property tax if you base it on the value of your house. It's a fact. You can look it up. And that even compares to Bismarck and Fargo that use specials. It's costing people, and there's younger people that, they can't afford to buy houses. And that burden is there. And out talking to people, I've had several of them tell me that this last year, their payment to the bank was going up $200 a month, and that was to cover their property tax. And it's just, it is a quality of life issue because, as they were saying too, rent is expensive. And that, it ties back into property tax. And Minot has to get its handle on its spending also.
Okay, thank you. Scott, Leif, same question.
As I stated earlier, I'm visually impaired, so big shocker, I can't drive. So I'm very pedestrian. I'm probably one of the most pedestrian people in Minot. And I'll be honest, I see a different side of things in Minot because of that. The police chief will tell you, I've run into some interesting characters. But also I talk to everyday people that say, you know what, I no longer can go for a walk because of the number of stray dogs that are running around. That kind of stuff happens. That's quality of life stuff. When it comes to general fund, fire, police, following codes, let's get back to basics. And I think that's the biggest part of it. Quality of life matters, but even I, as pedestrian as I am, do not like, for instance, the $4.7 million pedestrian bridge that is still in the city's CIP. It doesn't have a funding source, but I came to a meeting where they were talking about special assessing my neighborhood, Northeast Minot, in order to pay for it. When there's already the Victoria Bridge that I can cross the river and get to the proposed park that'll be at the Burlington Northern property, whatever that park or whatever it'll be.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum, same question.
So it really comes back to the same 2 things. We need to focus on fundamental services. We need to make sure that we're providing all those services to the best of our ability. Those are the things that government can and should do well, and I believe that Minot does that well and needs to continue to do so. But second of all, to get the quality of life better for young people, for all of us, we have to lower taxes. We have to find a way to make that work. As Scott mentioned a minute ago, Minot has the highest property tax rates in the state. And that is not sustainable long-term. We cannot expect to grow our community and have it go in the direction that we want with those rates at that amount.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Scott, you're next.
Can you repeat the question, Mark?
Absolutely. From a City of Minot perspective, understanding, of course, that City of Minot has a different budget than the Park District or the public schools or Ward County, what would you change and/or improve from a quality of life standpoint that will aid new businesses, existing businesses, new residents, or existing residents here in town?
So I think to kind of add on to some things that have been said by other people, first off, anything that we can continue to make this a more walkable and a more livable community is extraordinarily important. I think that as we look at people can choose where they want to live at nowadays, the more things that we can do to make this into a good environment for people to live in is extremely important. And I appreciate the work that's being done on the Safe Routes to School programs throughout our community. I think that that's going to continue to be an issue as with next year with a middle school being downtown now. I think that really those walkable communities and things like that are exceptionally important. I want to talk a little bit about an issue in a different perspective. What we primarily have here right now is that our housing costs are going up, and it's not just because of taxes, it's because we have a housing shortage. And the fact is, that's wonderful. If you're selling your house, you love the fact that home value went up. If you're getting a mortgage on a house, you like the fact that that's going up. If you're a realtor, you really love it. But it's really bad for people moving to this community. And so we saw some stuff. One of the first votes I had when I was on council was a vote to give a tax incentive, a property tax break to new housing in this town. And it's working. We've had a 40% increase in new housing permits this year because of that kind of stuff. That's what we need. We need more housing so that we can bring the price of housing down so that it can be more affordable for people.
Okay, thank you. Scott, Rob Fuller, same question.
Well, again, I think it all comes down to what it costs to live in Minot. And the sheer fact that the property tax is so high to live here, it affects business owners, it affects people wanting to move here. Again, you have a choice to make where you're going to move to. Is Minot an attractive place to move to as compared to some of the other cities in North Dakota? And I think our survey, again, our wonderful survey that we had shows that a lot of people are not happy with the direction that Minot has gone, and 90% of that is they don't believe the city is listening to them, and they believe the property taxes are too high and the city isn't working for them. That has to change. You know, the city's job, as Mike said, is to provide essential services, provide them well, and do the best you can. Other than that, you need to make Minot an attractive place to live, and by lowering the cost of living, that makes it more attractive for people to move here, both business and employee-wise, workforce.
Okay, thank you. Rob, Mike, finish us off on this question, please.
This is great. I should have been on the other side of the table so I didn't have to follow. But no, I wrote down a few things, and they were also like what Mike has to say. I think people they want a quality of life. They want the essential services. They want to feel safe. They want to have opportunity. I think we're all sitting here, and from what I remember, all of us said we were born and raised, or we came back, and like what we're doing is we're getting involved, and we're listening to the people in the community, and we're giving up our time and wanting to serve you as a citizen, to answer those questions or to listen to what you have to say. I think we're all vested in that success. In regards to the business aspect, I think we're going to put forth the best effort because we care, and our businesses will reap the benefits of it, because I think if we get in, the quality of life will increase, and we'll do some good things.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Let's move on to a new question now. This one we start with Scott Samuelson. Scott, how will you, as an elected leader, we're all assuming that you get elected, so how will you, as an elected leader in our community, support our military?
I think that's one thing that Minot does very well, is support the military. My father was in the U.S. Navy for 25 years, and so I've actually lived on military bases and been involved with some military. I have two brothers that are veterans of the military, and I personally, even if I'm not on the council, I will always support our military. The military from Minot Air Force Base is our neighbors and our friends, and we will always support them.
Okay, thank you. Scott, Leif, same question. How will you, as an elected leader in our community, support our military?
Well, I want to compliment those involved with the Home for the Holidays. I think that was a phenomenal program. Over the years, I've known very many military people, and the thing I hear over and over again is they don't really feel welcome. While I think accurate data about, say, for instance, the economic impact that the base has is vital, but first and foremost, they're people we work with. Now, I don't have any children, but a lot of people up here do. They go to school with their kids. They're citizens. Our first notion shouldn't be, are they a dollar sign? It's their citizens. Talk to them like they are. That's what they want.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum, same question. How will you, as an elected leader in our community, support our military?
So first off, just to go back to what I mentioned before, Task Force 21 is a fabulous program, and we need to continue to support that to make sure that our military members know as a whole that we're doing those things. But beyond that, I think we need to look at each one of us individually. Prior to my time in our current accounting office, I worked as a property manager, owner in a property management company. I worked with hundreds of new airmen coming to Minot and helped them find their first place, got them moved in. The most important thing that I was able to offer them was a friendly face, a person they could contact. They had my number to text. So if it was 9 p.m. and they said, where's the nearest grocery store? I could solve that for them. You know what? That's not a government solution. That's every one of us. Everybody in this crowd, every one of us as residents here has to do that. That's how we take care of the military. It's not a city solution. We've got good things going on there, but every one of us has to step up and make sure we're doing our individual part.
Okay, thank you. Scott, same question, please.
So my father served our country for 27 years in the U.S. Marines. He was one of the first group of Marines to land in Vietnam, and I've always had a huge amount of pride in that. And while my service became the nonprofit sector, and now, for a little bit here in elected office, I think that from our service members and their families, we get such a sense of civic pride and such a sense of love for our country and of everything. And I think that the more that we can do to engage with them, the better it is. I think that we want to make Minot home for them. And we heard yesterday at the event, the nuclear symposium event, they're talking about maybe having some cold weather pay. And that tells you a little bit about how hard it can be for people when they hear that they're coming to Minot. And I think that we have to do everything we can as a society, as Mike said, as a community, to welcome people here, because they are our friends and our neighbors. And the other thing is that maybe they'll choose to stay here. I've got a handful of folks in my office that came here for a short period of time and have ended up staying here forever. Those are wonderful members of our community. I think that a couple of things that the city council can do, one of the things I was proud to do was we became the first city in North Dakota. We're in the process of becoming the first city to have a certified mental health clinic at their state. I think that's exceptionally, mental health and veterans issues are exceptionally important, especially when you're in a cold environment. I think that's something that we can do. And then also childcare. I've heard from base members, I've heard from folks out there how hard lack of childcare within our community can affect base readiness and affects morale. So I think that's one more thing that we can do.
Okay, thank you. Scott. Rob, same question. How will you as an elected leader in our community support our military?
Well, I think there's a number of things we need to do to support the military. I mean, some of the programs and things we currently have going on are fantastic. Mike, the Task Force 21, some of the other things. But one of the biggest things that you hear, and I have over 70% of the people that work for me at my business are military, ex-military, so I employ a lot of military folks. One of the biggest things you hear is that, one, it's expensive and you can't find childcare in Minot, and two, they would love to live here, but there aren't the amenities that there are in other places. So, I mean, to continue to support the military, I think is, as Mike said, a community goal, not just a city goal. We need to bring those people in and accept them into our community as part of our families. But the longer term goal should be, how do we keep them here when they leave the military? How do we make them want to stay in Minot? And again, I'm going to go back to the same thing. We need to drive down the cost of living in Minot, and we need to make it an affordable, amenity-filled place for people to want to move to.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson.
All right. So in regards to the military and its support, I feel that personally my support has no bounds. I'm 100% in. I've served on the Right Start Committee, which is a meeting for when all the military personnel first get stationed. It's a full day event, and I've gone up there and done that on my own time before, a long time ago. I currently serve on the Military Affairs Committee. Like to go up and find out what they've got going on. Leif mentioned the Home for the Holidays. I can say that I work for I volunteer for Pheasants for the Future, and because of some of the regulations that we needed to do, they needed a gaming license, and so I can say that I worked with the Chamber, EDC, and Magic City Beverage, and was able to secure them the necessary legal requirements to run the raffle, and was glad to do it, and glad to send all 116 of them home, and so I'll support, and I also will agree with Samuelson that whether I get elected or not has no bearing. I'll continue to support the Minot Air Force Base wholeheartedly.
Okay, thank you. Steve, I think you get to finish us off on this question.
As a clinical psychologist, about a third to half of my client load over the past years has been active duty military personnel, their family members, and retirees. So I think I have a unique perspective on needs, particularly since people generally tell their psychologists things they don't tell anybody else. I think basically I would agree with most of what's been said here. I think the thing I would add is just sensitivity to people from different backgrounds whose skin color may be different, who may speak the language a little bit differently, and try to be warm and welcoming on an individual kind of encounter by encounter basis. And be sensitive, too, to the fact that we need to be maybe more flexible with things. You know, perhaps a worker may need to go home early because their spouse got held over overnight or is being deployed. So I think an awareness that military life is more challenging than normal life and a willingness to be flexible and accommodate those needs when they come up.
Okay, thank you. It's time to move on to our next question. Leif, we get to start with you on this one. And again, thank you to our candidates for being here tonight. We're about halfway done with where I think we want to be. We'll get you out of here before 6. I think that's probably fair, okay? This question, if you were to be elected, and this could be a shorter question or shorter answer if you want it to be. If you were to be elected, what are your top 2 or top 3 priorities as a member of the Minot City Council? Leif.
No different than me as a citizen. I've been asking people to pay attention to what's going on. I'm kind of known as a watchdog, if you will. Right now, I would suggest every citizen go online, go to the city website, and look up the master development agreement for the TIFs at the tracks. I don't have a problem with TIFs, say, downtown, if it's getting a blighted building back on track. But there was nothing blighted about the wheat field north of the new hospital. And if you read the details on the Phase 1 TIF that was passed 7-0, it's already done and over with, there's nothing for housing. How that actually works is it's on the community space. So the TIF is for a concert venue, a water feature, a media board, and a hockey rink in the winter. There's no housing. The city and the developer can agree to add to it later. Now, there's a Phase 2 TIF coming that involves a parking garage. If some people think I might sound bitter about that, anytime you give a tax abatement for some, others have to make up the difference. So I'll just continue to educate people. That's what I'll do.
Okay, thank you. Mike Blessum, same question. If you were to be elected, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities as a member of the Minot City Council?
It's really straightforward. It's the same things that we've all mostly been talking about tonight. It's focusing on fundamental services, making sure we're providing those as effectively and efficiently as we can. Number 2, we need to reevaluate our economic development programs and really take a new, fresh look at all of it, top to bottom. And those things in combination will help us drive down the property tax rates.
Okay, thank you. Scott Burlingame, next.
I think that first one will come as a surprise to nobody. My number 1 priority will continue to be childcare. I want to help out young parents. I want to help out children in this community. I think we can do some stuff with that. Number 2 will be sustainable budgeting. I think that one of the problems that we can do is if we get too herky-jerky with our budgeting, we can make decisions that cost us ultimately more in the long run. I think that when you look at some of the infrastructure needs in our community, when you look at some of the employment needs, I think that making changes to that in a way that would eventually cost us more in the long run. It might save us a little bit today, but it'll cost us more later. And the final part of that is smart growth, which is continuing to grow from within our current footprint in our community. We don't need to grow out further. That just puts more stress on our fire and our police and on our water and our streets and all of that stuff. We need to grow within our community. We need to incentivize that. We need to do whatever we can to continue to grow within our community.
Okay, thank you. Rob Fuller, same question. What are your top 2 or 3 priorities if you were to be elected as a member of the Minot City Council?
Top 3 priorities. Number 1, drive down property tax because it's absolutely killing people in this city. Number 2, while TIF funding has its uses, and I believe it's a valued tool we can use, I worked with a number of cities in my commercial banking career in Colorado, and they use TIF funding completely different than the city of Minot does. If you have $1 million company or $1 billion company that wants to come to town and build a building or a property, and you want to give them tax-free for 5 to 8 years, the only people that's going to be tax-free for is them. The rest of us are going to pick that up, and we're going to have to eat it. And that's what's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years. So we need to address how we're using our TIF funding, I think, and I mean, that should be used for local, low-income projects that go up, not billion-dollar companies that want to come in here and build apartments and movie theaters and theme parks and everything else. And third, I really believe that we have to stop the frivolous spending within the city of Minot, okay? And I'm just going to throw 3 things out there. We spent $1 million, or we have budgeted for this year, $1 million in consultants. Why do we need $1 million in consulting fees? We spent $1.4 million to bail out a project that was supposed to have no taxpayer funds in it. And number three, we spent $1 million 3 years ago to microsurface a road that we knew was going to get tore up this year because it's in the flood zone. I think those three things right there, in my opinion, are very wasteful spending, and we need to address that kind of thing within the city budget.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Eatson, same question.
Evidently, I'm unoriginal because I had written down property taxes and spending. So although I will make a stand that I want to address property taxes, I feel like it's obviously a common theme. As of right now, with the information that I have, I'm not in favor of just completely eliminating them. I don't know the ramifications of it, and I would like to know more information on what it would do to do it. But do we need to do something? Yes. When I was getting my 300 signatures, it's a hot button, and so give them what they want. Let's find out some answers. Like I said, I'm in favor of doing something in reductions, but elimination I'm a little nervous about. And then spending and education on what we're spending our money on. Like I said, I just jumped into this race, and so I haven't had a chance to really gather all the intel that I need. But if we could be a little more transparency on our spending, like when I hear what Mr. Fuller mentions, I'd like to ask the question, what happened? I don't feel that, I don't know the answers, but it's property taxes and spending for me.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve, same question. If you were to be elected, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities as a member of the Minot City Council?
I think the first priority would be public safety. We just built a new fire station providing better services for the western part of the city. We need to bring our police force up to where it is. Right now, we're only at 82% of what it is in terms of manpower. That's not acceptable over the long run. The second thing is I think we need to focus on those basic city services, the quality of streets, the quality of water, things like that. The third thing, I think, is transparency and honesty. And this may not be a popular thing to say, but I'm getting a little annoyed here about all these complaints about property taxes. If you own a lot of property, yeah, you get hit in the pocket. But if you rent a home, I don't think that affects you as much. And I think we need to be honest about it. When it comes to the entire tax burden, special assessments, property taxes, and sales taxes, we are number 5 out of the top 12 cities. So it may be more than you or I feel comfortable with. It may be more than you would like. But don't keep saying the property taxes are so high, because they're not. North Dakota is also a very low tax state to begin with. We're 43rd out of the 50 states in overall tax burden. Again, we can be more efficient, we should be more efficient, but please, let's be realistic about this. If you're 5 out of number 12 in the whole tax burden for citizens, that's what we need to look at, not one particular source of revenues.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And I think, Scott, you finish us off on this question. What would be your top 2 or 3 priorities as a member of the Minot City Council if elected?
My top priorities would be spending, getting back to basics. There's places that we could look. We need to look at duplication of services. And it does fall in with economic development. Economic development, there's several positions that the city of Minot has for economic development, and then we also fund money to Minot Chamber EDC for the same thing. We need to really look at that and see. I mean, to me, it's a duplication. Several people have talked to me, and when it was brought up about budget cuts, is public safety. Police and fire. The one thing I want people to understand is we've had different numbers and stuff that come from the city. Our police and fire department is under 13% of our current budget right now. If we can't find other places to cut our budget than go to the police department, I don't know why that comes up first. Taxes, property taxes, it is a big thing, and I hope there's more questions to come on that. It can be solved. People are looking for tax reform, not tax relief. We need to fix the system. It's broken. It's been broken for a long time. There was a measure that came up 12 years ago to eliminate property tax. Our state leaders told us that they would fix it. It's 12 years, and we're still waiting. Over the last several candidate forums and stuff for Ward County Commission, City
You're at
Council.
almost 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things going on that we're not told the truth on.
Okay, thank you, Scott. A new question here for, I think we start back over at Mike Blessum. Okay, so the top priorities, this has been referenced a few times already, the citizen satisfaction survey that was taken late last year with the results that came out just a few months ago. The top priorities listed in that citizen satisfaction survey, when you take the importance and the satisfaction combined, this is page 10 of the intro, were two things: overall maintenance of city streets and sidewalks, and overall flow of traffic on city streets. I'd like two questions answered. The first one is easy. So thumbs up or thumbs down from each candidate. Do you support these priorities? Thumbs up if you do, thumbs down if you don't. Okay, everyone said thumbs up. Okay, so then the next question, and Mike, you get to start with us on this. How would you help improve maintenance of street sidewalks and overall flow of traffic?
So one of the things that I found interesting as I've been involved over the last year or two in watching the budget cycles and listening to the city council talk about this is the current method that we're using for city streets and maintenance. It's been great to hear the city manager say, hey, we're going to dedicate $8 million to this process and making sure that we're keeping up the streets and doing all the maintenance work that we should. But to be honest with you, that's not the right approach. A slush fund essentially to create this way of going about fixing our streets isn't the way that you do basic maintenance. The way you do basic maintenance is you work with your public works staff to determine what the project list should look like based on a sectored system around the city, and you use those funds because the point is maybe we don't need $8 million this year. Maybe the sector we're working on only requires 4, but next year we're in a sector where we need 11. And so it's always been a little bit interesting to me to see that that's been our approach, because we really need to be focused from a budget perspective on the projects we're going to complete and get them done for the people to be transparent.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Scott, same question. What would you do, or excuse me, how would you help improve maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and overall flow of traffic?
So first off, it's important to remember, in 2019, the city spent $1,090,000 on streets. The last few years, as Mike just said, we've been spending $8 million. In order for us to get up to speed with deferred maintenance, we'd have to be spending somewhere around $13 million. We know, we listen to the city staff, we listen to those folks, we have an understanding of this problem. But the fact of the matter is that money is not unlimited, so we have to set a budget. We're setting that $8 million number and saying, and instructing the city staff that we know you can't do the $13 million that you would like to. Here's your $8 million, do the best you can. And within that, they do an amazing job, because these are professionals that know more about streets and all that kind of stuff than any one of us up here. We have to respect what they do. Our job is to kind of set the purse strings in the budget and allow them to do that. I think that it's interesting, because we just began construction season around town, and I think that the only thing people complain more about than bad roads is road construction. But the fact of the matter is that there have been a lot of really good stuff done in this community. The streets are getting better. That $8 million a year, that continued investment is good, and we have to continue that investment.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Rob Fuller, same question. How would you help improve maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and overall flow of traffic?
Well, I think we would have to have a sincere conversation with Public Works Director and those guys and say, hey, look, there's a lot of complaints about this out there. We have the same potholes in the same streets for the last 30 years. How does this continue to happen, right? We know where there's issues and everything in town. I think the best thing to do is to sit down and say, what are our needs? What are our issues? And how do we address them? If it's $8 million, then it's $8 million. But if we need more or we need less, I think we go that route. And if we need more, because we have to take care of something that's really causing the citizens an issue, then we have to look at ways to cut other places in the budget to add that to the Public Works to help them get to their goal or finish their project, rather than raising property taxes or some other form of tax increase that we would do to pay for that.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, same question.
You want to repeat it for me just quick?
For sure. The question is, how would you help improve maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and overall flow of traffic?
Okay, I was going to agree with a lot of what they'd mentioned earlier, all three of them, but I was thinking about, I like to see that there's some sidewalks. I live in Southwest. I'm happy to see them. I hope they get utilized. I think it's a positive thing. I feel bad for the neighbors that are getting their lawns tore up, but I'm excited that it's there. It's where I grew up. I'm happy to see them. I'm happy to not walk in the street. In regards to the flow of traffic, that's one of the things. I live on Southfield. I work on Northfield, so I'm constantly commuting. I think, working with Public Works, like Fuller mentioned, is a good thing. I think there's some ways there. And one of the other notes that I had is making sure that we hold those construction companies that are doing our maintenance, make sure that we hold them accountable when they say they're going to get something done by a deadline, make sure that they do it, make sure we're getting what we pay for.
Great, thank you, Mike. Steve, same question?
There's no getting around this. It's going to cost money. And you can't lower taxes or fees of every kind and ask for more services and ask for better roads. It just doesn't work that way. We can't print money in the basement like the federal government does. You know, if you think the roads are bad enough, we have $520 million of deferred maintenance on infrastructure. $520 million. And that sounds like a lot. Nationally, I don't know how many trillions it is. We're not, I don't think, any worse than any other municipality. But the point is, we've tried to scrimp and save for years and years, and it's caught up with us. And they're right over there at that corner of the table. We need to invest prudently. That's why you hire a consultant to say, these are the worst roads. That's why we have a truck that comes in once a year to go through the roads and get scientific numbers on how bad the pavements are. And we're prioritizing our investments are those pavements that we can improve with the least amount of money. So we're doing that. But the reality is it's going to cost money, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say lower expenses and lower taxes and build more and better roads and sewers and streets. It doesn't work that way. You got to be realistic about it. And I think we need to follow that community survey, which incidentally was something I pushed for many years now. I'm glad to see we're finally having it. We need to focus on those basics. I agree.
Okay, thank you. Scott Samuelson, same question then. How would you help improve maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and overall flow of traffic?
Actually, I think our city staff does a pretty good job of maintaining our streets. I think our streets are actually pretty good compared to other places that I go to and I've been to. And I do believe that they need to target areas that are the worst, because it seems like it's year after year after year. It seems like it's the same spots. Potholes this time of year are always going to be there. This is North Dakota. It's also tough to structure a road in North Dakota with what we have. As far as traffic flow, with all the technology we have out there, I do not know why, like on Broadway and Burdick, why we cannot time streetlights. It just seemed, with the technology out there, there's got to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And Leif, finish us off on this question, please.
I can't add much to what it's already been said. Obviously, I don't drive, so maybe I'm not up to speed with what's going on. But I do see the
But you do
crumbling
walk on the
curb and-
sidewalks. You do walk on the sidewalks.
Well, true, but usually sidewalks are special assessed, unless they're considered quote-unquote a fitness path, then it's a little different. But I see the crumbling curb gutter. What I don't want to see is we get into a hole where now we start to special assess stuff that should have been just regular maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your answers to that question. This next one dives into the budget. So the city has already stated that they will submit, the staff will submit a zero increase budget for 2025. As you'll have an opportunity to influence and vote on that budget, are you comfortable with a zero increase budget? And if so, that could lead to cuts in services, no pay increases for some staff, or fewer staff altogether. Are you okay with this, and what would you potentially cut? And I think we start with Scott Burlingame on this one.
So first off, I'm never going to be excited about trying to balance a budget off the backs of our employees. That's another great way to, try to step over a dollar to save a dime. You look at the cost of our firefighters, you look at the cost of our police force, you look at the cost of some of our well-trained people, it's significantly more expensive to replace them than it is to keep them. So I would never start off that way. I have instructed city staff, when I've talked to them, to come back with a zero increase in property taxes, meaning that we need to look at the appraised value, not just the mill levy, which, by the way, the mill levy's been going down for several years, but it's that cost of housing that's been driving up, or the cost of property that's been driving up property taxes, not the mill levy, which is the way we set it. So I've now, and I think this is the right direction that the city is doing, which is that we need to hold a line on that property tax. But I think that there will be hard decisions to be made. I'd much rather look, though, to the people who know this, who are there every day, and give them the instructions. I don't know how our sanitation department can save a little bit of money, but I'm willing to bet that the people that work in the sanitation department know. I don't know how our police force can save money, but I'm willing to bet they can. And that's with every government agency. It's our job to set the purse strings and to set the budget. It's their job to do what we instruct them to do, and that's what we've done, and I fully support holding the line on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Rob, you're next.
Can you repeat that one more time for me?
For sure. So the city has stated that they will be submitting a zero increase budget for 2025. As you'll have an opportunity to influence and vote on the budget, are you comfortable with a zero increase budget, one that could lead to cuts in services, no pay increases for some staff, or fewer staff altogether? Are you okay with this, and what would you potentially cut?
I'm completely fine with a zero-based budgeting system because, it starts at zero and you got to work towards what you need rather than saying, hey, this is what we had last year and now let's add some more to it. Will it lead to a diminished services? I don't believe that's true because I believe there's other places where we can cut money out of our budget in the city that it won't affect our services. As far as raises and employees and everything like that, I'm all for giving the police and fire department raises every year. But I'm a small business owner and I'm going to be straight. I'm not able to give my employees raises or big raises every year just because of the economy and everything that's going on. And I don't understand why the city should be any different. I mean, do they not deserve raises? I'm not saying that at all. The people that work for the city work hard. But unfortunately, in the economy and the world we're in, raises aren't possible every year for everybody. And so while I'm wholeheartedly behind the zero-based budgeting, there are some hard decisions that will have to be made and looked at when we go through the budget.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, same question.
I'll do that this time. On the cover, I think it sounds good, but I don't know that I could necessarily agree wholeheartely with it. One of the things that there's three of us sitting at this table that are going to have to get elected in June and approve a budget in July, it's coming fast. I know that there's opportunities that the city's being transparent, allowing us to jump in there. In regards to my feelings on it, I think we have to recognize the fact that we're going to have to start saying no, and there's going to be some, whatever those no's are, I don't have any specifics on them, but something, like if it's not there, it's not there. And so it's going to be a tough call, and it's going to be a tough decision, but I'm certain it's going to, it'll happen, and it's unfortunate, but.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve, you're next.
I think the idea of a zero-based budget is a very important one. It's something we should have had some years ago. In terms of cutting back city staff, that would be a last choice option. I don't personally see as much waste and frivolity as the other people do. I think if they actually got into it, they'd see that most staff are hardworking and most of the programs we operate are pretty efficient and pretty effective. I think we can empower, need to empower our city staff to focus more on the effectiveness and efficiency. We need to give them more training. We need to give them better career ladders so they can develop their skills as they advance and give them the time and the direction to say, look, reevaluate what you do and see if it can be done better, see if it can be done more cheaply. I don't know that we've had that kind of leadership development opportunity yet or demand on the part of staff, and I think we need to do that. As my fellow alderman said, I think they basically know what they're doing, and I think they just need to be empowered and given the leadership and the tools to do their jobs more effectively, which I think they're doing adequately to begin with.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott, same question?
Can you repeat that, please?
For sure, yeah. So the city has stated that they will be submitting a zero increase budget for 2025. As you'll have the opportunity to influence and potentially vote on that budget, are you comfortable with a zero increase budget, one that could lead to cuts in services, no pay increases for some staff, or fewer staff altogether? Are you okay with this, and what would you potentially cut?
Well, the way that that's worded as far as a zero increase budget, I don't know how we would have to make any cuts when this particular year, there's $16 million for puppy dog coolie, which won't be in next year's budget. So there's $16 million that is freed up. So I don't know that there would be a decrease in services or staff. There are things that we can do without cutting services. One is a facade program. The other one is wayfinding signage. A quiet zone. It's not going to cut any services from anybody that I know of. So that I agree with it, and I actually think that property taxes should be lowered, not kept the same.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, same question.
I'm okay with a zero increase. The thing about a budget is, it's money you intend to spend. Okay? Right now, I'm more concerned about the unintentional spending. Okay, 2 years ago, we had a big snow event. And I'm not picking on certain employees here, but I think we all remember the dump truck that was run into the bridge. Not only was the alarm actually tied down, so it was rendered useless, what if we had a crystal ball, and that crystal ball was actually a city employee who followed the handbook, of which, by the way, the handbook is not on the city website, I don't know why. But they notified their superiors about an employee who was abusing equipment and acted in a dangerous manner. That actually happened. And who was ridiculed? The employee who did the right thing. If we would have been listening, it could have saved taxpayers, what, $125,000 for that dump truck? We have good employees. Listen to them, respect them. Being accountable means rewarding good employees and holding those accountable that cost taxpayers money.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum, you get to finish us on this one.
So I'll start by saying I applaud the city manager and his team for taking this path, because to me, it brings us an important inflection point, I hope, in our city's history, where we start to change the mentality we're using to build our budget. We're now starting to say that it really is a choice that we're making each year about what we're going to spend, and that's where we're going to start with. And I like that. I think that that is the right approach. The other thing that I'll say that's maybe a little bit surprising to some is that the spending side isn't the only side of the equation. We absolutely have to look at all that. But we have some opportunities. Right now in our general fund, under the property tax, we fund our airport, our cemetery, our public transportation, and our library directly out of levies from the property tax. We can look at options, and again, I don't have every answer, but we can look at options there for how we fund those things. Are there ways that those can be funded more directly so that they become more of a zero-sum game overall? And then we don't need that levy going to those. So it is time to think different. And I'm glad to see the city manager and his staff headed in this direction, because it's going to bring all these opportunities for conversations.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Recognizing that I've got dozens of questions I won't get to today, I want to do a couple of speed round questions. So this is thumbs up or thumbs down, and I get that this is more nuanced than a thumbs up or thumbs down, but I just want to get through a few questions here. So thumbs up means you support this, thumbs up means you don't, or thumbs down means you don't support this. Would you support a wage freeze for city employees? Thumbs up if you support this, thumbs down if you don't. Would you support a wage freeze for city employees? Okay, next question. Would you be in favor of cutting public safety positions? Okay. Let's move on to another set of questions. These came in online. Rob Fuller, I think you get to start us off on these. I'm going to combine two questions because I think they can kind of be combined. I know that they're nuances and they're different. But I'd like to ask you about initiatives that the city could support or that you would support to create more affordable housing in Minot and more affordable daycare. So what could you do, or what would the city be able to do to afford or to support initiatives that create more affordable housing in Minot and more affordable daycare?
Well, again, let's go back to the cost of living in Minot and property tax, right? I've heard all kinds of things from people coming into my business, talking to me, having questions, asking different things. Number one, and let's just use a $200,000 house. And not that there's a lot of those out there, but somebody that moves to Minot and buys a $200,000 house has probably a pretty fixed budget, or some of our senior citizens that are living here have a pretty fixed budget. If we continue to raise property taxes every year and that goes up and up and up, it's going to become unattainable for them to live here in Minot, because it's going to drive them out of the city limits. So again, first and foremost, I think we need to start looking at the property tax to make it more affordable. And again, daycare workers, how are we going to support that? I've heard a couple of different things off the daycare panel that they put together and everything. Again, one of the options that I heard on there was giving free property tax to people that own the properties or buildings for the daycares. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be 100% transparent. I own a building that is rented by a daycare. If you think that you're going to give me free property tax, and mine's outside the city of Minot, so it won't matter, but if you're going to give me free property tax and I'm going to pass that on to the daycare, and they're going to pass that on and say, hey, we're going to lower the cost of childcare, they're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. So again, if you want those $10 to $20 employees that are going to work at daycares to come work at your daycare, you got to have a place for them to live, and that's going to be the low-income housing or the lower-cost housing, and that's all going to be driven by property tax in the city of Minot.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, same question. What initiatives would you support to create more affordable housing or more affordable daycare in Minot?
This is one of those that'll go back to I don't know. I don't know what the answer. I don't know an initiative. I can't speak intelligently on it. My wife and I don't have any children. I've never felt the pinch. I believe that it's real. I believe that it's something that Mr. Burlingame is obviously very passionate about. I see his enthusiasm. So it's a thing. I don't know what initiative I would do, but I mean, nobody would ever argue with trying to help someone that needs housing or that needs, daycare or those things. I guess I don't know the answer to it, but I know I wouldn't be a negative, or against it.
Thank you, Mike. Steve, same
I
question.
attended just about every meeting of the Child Care Committee that Scott Burlingame and Lisa Olson co-chaired, and they're currently developing a list of several dozen specific recommendations, and the ones that I've heard talked about I think are very good ones, and I would endorse those. It's a whole range of things, from something like offering free CPR classes for daycare providers to the fire department, to making the licensing process easier at our end at least, compared to the state end. So I think certain specific recommendations are coming out of it. Repeat the question again, please.
What would you do, or what initiatives would you support to create more affordable housing or more affordable daycare in Minot?
Again, it's a matter of private enterprise. There has to be a profit in it for most people. I think we need to make it easier for people to start up businesses. Again, if you open up a daycare, I think you care about kids. You don't care about licenses or about cash flow or things like that. So maybe one of the things we need to do in conjunction with the chamber is to designate one of our economic development people and say, look, your job is to grow these things. Your job is to make it easier for people to start them up. Again, you're the economic development people. You're not the daycare person. That's not where your heart is. So I think things are in the works already, and it's a matter of just seeing them through.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott, same question.
I believe all this, it starts in the private sector. That's where it's going to come from. And the city can be involved in it, in the talks in it. And maybe there is things that we can do with regulations, easing the regulations and stuff like that. When it comes to, again, property tax relief for businesses, I just can't support it, because everyone else is going to make up for that relief that you give to someone else, and we never get it back as far as the taxpayer.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif Schneider, same question. What would you do, or what initiatives would you support to create more affordable housing or more affordable daycare in Minot?
Okay, well, I don't have any children of my own. I've worked with youth for several years. So I can understand the value and the concern, especially, it doesn't matter if you're an employer, like was mentioned earlier. I just think it's a question of priorities. Yeah, it involves getting private enterprise involved, but our priorities seem to be backwards to me. If we can incentivize a concert venue, a hockey rink, and a water feature, the tracks, we can incentivize other stuff. I just think it's a question of mixed up priorities.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum.
So I think at its core, both of these issues are market-driven forces. I mean, that at the end of the day, the city isn't really going to have a lot of tools at its disposal that are worthwhile to make this happen. And so I'll focus just for a second on the housing side of things. One of the things that we need to make sure of from an affordable housing perspective is that we aren't disincenting other development from local developers by giving public funds to huge companies to do developments on the edge of town. We've talked about the downtown things. We can do TIF funding downtown to fix a blighted building. But doing big TIF projects on the edge of town is only going to tell other developers that already have skin in the game around this community that their funds and their developments are not worthwhile and shouldn't be done. That's what's happening today, and we need to stop that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And I think, Scott, you finish us off on this question.
So this is another hard one for me to answer in 30 seconds, because I spent a career on both of these, well, especially on affordable housing, but a little bit on childcare the last couple of years. First and foremost, even if we eliminate property taxes, that is not going to drive down the price of rent. Just like how Rob here said that if he gave his childcare a discount, or they're not necessarily going to be able to pay more, I don't think that by doing that, that is market driven. So in order to drive down housing costs, we need to bring up the housing supply. And that's the answer. When it comes to affordable housing, especially low to moderate income housing, that is working with local nonprofits and helping to incentivize that. And we've done some creative stuff in the last year. If you go up around the new Ramstead area, there's been some affordable housing that's been built up there. But we still have a massive shortage in that. And whether we like it or not. Those are people that we need in our community. If you look at the housing survey, the number of people in this community paying significantly more than 30% of their annual or their monthly income towards housing is ridiculous, and it's a massive clog on our economy. Childcare, I obviously, the committees came out with a bunch of recommendations. I think that we can do some stuff that incentivizes, but only incentivize if it includes increasing the pay in order to attract more people to that area. I think that we can use city staff to open up that door a little bit more. I think that we can use the bully pulpit that is this room and this council chambers to talk about these issues and invite people in. And I think that we can do a whole lot to help out families. And just to recognize that this is a problem, and no, we cannot do everything, and I've never said that. That doesn't mean we can't do anything.
Okay, thank you, Scott. A couple more quick ones, so get your thumbs ready. On this one, I'm looking for a thumbs up again if you support something, or a thumbs down if you don't. A couple people have mentioned funding to help support Task Force 21. Do you support the continuation of funding the efforts to ensure the missions of the Minot Air Force Base are secure? Thumbs up if you support the continuation of funding the efforts for that. Okay? And then the second one, would you support the use of special assessments for neighborhood improvements? I've got two questions. So one is on neighborhood improvements and one is on commercial development. So I'll ask those differently. Would you support, thumbs up if yes, would you support the use of special assessments for neighborhood improvements? And the second one is, would you support the use of special assessments for commercial improvements? Okay, thank you for those speed round questions. Next question, I think we start with Mike Geetson. Okay, so Mike, and this question goes to everyone, but Mike, you start us off. Have you had a chance to review the most recent city budget, and what specifically would you add or subtract from that budget?
I have not. Like I mentioned earlier, I came into the game late. I know that the city is offering a 3-day or 2.5-day opportunity to review the budget. I unfortunately am unable to do that. That is one of the biggest fears, if elected, that I would have to really kick her in gear, if you will, to be able to speak professionally or financially, fiscally responsible for that budget. So I cannot say anything in regards to the budget at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve?
This is our budget. I think it's the best compromise we could achieve. There are things in there that I didn't like. There are things I wished would have been in there. But again, you have to balance the needs of 50,000 people and look at the long term over the years ahead. I would like to see more incentives again for efficiency. I would like to see more incentives to city staff to develop their skills. I would like to see us continue to be more effective in terms of our management. But I think, again, we deal with a reality. Politically, people don't want to spend money, and we have to respect that. So I think, again, all of us could have specific things we like or dislike, but I think this is the best we could come up with, and next year it's going to be even better. And I would encourage people to participate in these series of budget workshops on May 6th through 8th. All 7 of us were invited. It was put on our schedules. They're public meetings. You're open. We will listen to city staff to make their pitch. We will ask them questions. We will argue with them probably. And it'll be a good learning experience for everyone. You'll get a sense of where the money goes and how it's spent and why our professionally paid staff with credentials think it needs to be spent a certain fashion. And believe me, we do question them significantly, and we've had some pretty good arguments. So come join the fun next, the 5th, the 6th, 7th, and 8th of May.
Okay, come join the fun. You all heard it from Steve. Okay. Scott Samuelson, same question, please.
I've mentioned a few already. The facade program, wayfinding signage, quiet zone. I would also take a look at the Magic Fund and the administration costs for the Magic Fund. And of course, facade program and the wayfinding, I was told doesn't come out of Magic Fund, but it comes out of the sales tax dollars for it. So if you take those two things out, 96% of the Magic Fund right now goes for administration. $30,000 will be put back into the Magic Fund in 2024. And it was very similar in 2023 and in 2022. There are places that we can cut, and we need to cut, and we need to look at everything.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, same question. Have you had a chance to review the 2023 city budget, and what would you change, add or subtract to that budget?
Specifically, no, I haven't glummed over the budget. I am looking forward to the process, but for me, it's going to be back to those basic services. You know, general fund, obviously, fire, police protection, quality of life stuff with regards to infrastructure. It's going to be back to basics, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum.
So I guess I'll start by saying I've spent a lot of time the last couple of years, not only following the city budget, and yes, I've looked at it in detail, but also the schools as well as the county. One of the things that I'll say as a populace right now in the city of Minot, as an example, at the last school board budget hearing, there were 2 people out of 47,000 residents, 2 people that got up and spoke. People need to engage in their government, and they need to let people know what their priorities are. And so I would encourage everybody to be involved and to be involved in the budget processes that are coming. To talk specifically about the city budget and where I would go, number one, I would ask, I'll be advocating for us to take a look at our economic development programs and where we're headed. Long-term, we need to take a close look at that and make sure that we've got the right programs headed in the right direction. And so that's the main place that I'll be looking. And then the other priority that I will have, as I mentioned before, is I want us to take a close look at, can we get more of our programs so that they are self-sufficient based on the dollars coming in versus the dollars being spent. That doesn't mean we'll get there across the board, but we need to have that mentality in mind because it gives us an opportunity to look at the general fund.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Scott Burlingame.
So that was the first and only budget I've ever had the opportunity to be part of, the one that Alderman Padragula held up there, and I want to echo something he said, which is there's a huge amount of work that went into that, and it was definitely a lot of give or take, I said shortly before I voted yes on that I didn't feel good about it, and the reason I didn't feel good about it was many of the issues that people talked about here tonight. But that being said, it was the best that we could come up with at that time, and I just think that it goes along with once you're actually in that chair, it was much easier for me 2 years ago before I got on the council, before I had the deep understanding of what's going on, and experience has taught me that these decisions are really, really hard, and they impact real people within our community, not only the taxpayers, not only the city of Minot, but also the future residents of the city. And we have to look at all of these things and try to make the best that we can out of that. I think that if you want to look at specific things, I just want to continue to invest in more sustainable budgeting, to look at not spending money on things that are going to cost us more in the long run, investing better. I'd rather spend a little bit more money now, today, than have to spend more in the future. But those are all just the decisions that we make when we're sitting through all those meetings and the multiple budget meetings and everything else.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Rob Fuller, same question. Have you had a chance to review the 2023 city budget? What would you change, or the 2024 version? What would you change, add, or subtract to the budget?
I have had a chance to look through it moderately. I haven't been into it as thoroughly as Mike has. As we've mentioned across the board here, there's a number of places where we can start cuts. We need to look at the EDC and make sure that that is operating the way we think it should be operating. We need to look at some of the, in my opinion, wasteful spending. As Scott said, the facade program, the Wayfair sign program. I mean, $1 million on consultants annually is kind of a crazy number if you ask me. So I think there's a lot of places we can look at cutting. Will we always get there, as Mike said? Probably not. But it's stuff that needs to start to be addressed to help bring that budget back within a manageable container for the city. Because right now, I think it's kind of growing beyond what we can actually fund. So that's where I'd start.
Okay, thank you very much. Got time, I think, for a couple more questions. I know we said 5:30. Are we okay with going till 6 today, gentlemen? Okay. And then I've got 2 or 3 more questions, then we'll give you time for a wrap-up comment. I still would like to get us out of here by 6, though. So Steve, we start with you on this next question. This question asks, this is from someone in the audience or online, what role does the City of Minot staff or elected leaders play in addressing the needs of minority groups in the community? What role does the City of Minot staff or elected leaders in our community, what do they play, what role do you play in addressing the needs of minority groups in the community?
Wow. I think the start is to be decent and courteous and respectful to everyone. Again, to set a good example. I don't think anybody deserves special treatment or special benefits, certainly not quotas or anything like that. But in our day-to-day interactions, to be kind and considerate to people and recognize that They may come from different backgrounds. They may wear a different hairstyle. They may have different sexual orientations or preferences. They're still people, and we need to respect that. I think the second thing is to make sure that there's no discrimination of any kind against city employees or residents of the community. One of the things that came up during this discussion, this controversy over the Human Relations Committee, was, I think, a sense by a fair number of people that things are being shoved down their throats. That's not the way it should ever be. And we should be respectful to everyone, whether they're a very open liberal person or a very conservative and maybe traditional person. So I think certain, perhaps even an ordinance or certainly a statement of policy by the city that we will not discriminate against residents no matter what their opinions or characteristics are, and they will not discriminate in any fashion against our employees. And again, a common courteous, if you will, faith-based kind of concern and compassion for our fellow human being.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Scott, same question. What role does the City of Minot staff or elected officials play in addressing the needs of minority groups in the community?
I don't know that there's any special needs that we need to look at. I think Minot does a good job with that. I've said in the past that I believe that Minot has probably the most caring people and nicest people on the face of this planet. I don't see any of the things that have been talked about in the past, and I sure hope they're not going on. It might be just something that people are talking about, but I don't see it in Minot.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif Snyder, same question.
As for city staff, I guess follow the law. That's about it there. For those of us that want to sit at the dais, I don't know how you can legislate morality. To me, that doesn't, the city's role is what it is. I don't see how we can change that.
Okay, thank you. Mike Blessum, what role does the city play, or City of Minot staff or elected officials play in addressing the needs of minority groups in the community?
So I got to serve on the Human Relations Committee, ad hoc committee that was tasked with taking a look at the ordinance and whether it should be continued and brought into the future. And I'll just sort of restate the points that I made there. The primary thing is that it's really not the role of the city. The city, there are federal laws, there are state laws that govern discrimination, and those laws need to be followed, and really that's outside of the purview of the city. The city is here to focus on basic services and make sure that this city is as inviting as we can from a services perspective. And I'll stick by that. I think that is the right path for our city to be, and there are wonderful, wonderful nonprofits, groups, individual people in this community that do great work in working with minority groups of all types and shapes and sizes.
Okay, thank you. Mike, Scott, same question.
So it's interesting because before every city council meeting, we say a pledge to the flag, pledge allegiance to the nation. We face the flag, I'm sorry. And we talk about freedom. And freedom means that you don't have to love like me or look like me or pray like me in order to share that same freedom. And I think that what we can do is just be open and welcoming, because as we look at solving workforce issues, not everybody who makes their home in the community is going to be like me. And that's okay. That makes us stronger. That's an advantage of living in a free society. And I'm okay with that. And I think we can listen. And I did serve on the Human Relations Commission or the ad hoc committee, and definitely controversial votes that I had on that. But what I still stick to is that I want to have the city council be the people that listen. And if people are struggling in this community, we can again be a sounding board for people. We don't need an in-between. We need to be there as a group and listen. My friend, a couple of persons down here said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth and we need to use it like that. And I think that's what we can do to a lot of those minority groups, is we need to listen first.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Rob Fuller, same question, please.
Well, as far as city employees go, again, follow the federal and state laws. That's all that needs to happen there. As far as us sitting on the city council and advocating from there, again, I don't think it's the city's job. The city's job is to focus on basic services. Minot is a wonderful, welcoming, loving community. I mean, that's why we all live here. That's why most of us have come back here if we've ever gotten to go away. We're a very Christian, faith-based community. I believe we have a very diverse group of people already living here, from the people that come in from the base, within the LGBTQ community. I know there's always going to be issues because there's ignorance in the world. but that's not for the city to fix. The city's job is to make this a great place for everybody to live, but like Leif said, how do you make morality be a thing from the city council?
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, you get to finish us on this question.
I agree with them all. I didn't hear anything that they said that I didn't agree with. It makes sense, even though we don't all share the same opinions. I like everything that they mentioned. I can't think of anything that I didn't agree with, so.
Okay. I like that answer. Okay, so got two different ones here to finish us off, two different questions, and then you can start thinking about your final statement if you haven't already. This question goes to a former hospital building in our downtown. The question is asked, what do you suggest Trinity Health consider doing with its former hospital buildings in downtown Minot? And Scott, we're at you now. So what do you suggest Trinity consider doing with its former hospital buildings in downtown?
That one is fairly easy for me. It's Trinity's building. It's up to Trinity to do what they want with that building. It's not for the city to try to take over and dictate what should go there. It's Trinity's building. It's Trinity's problem.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Leif, what would you suggest Trinity Health consider doing with its old hospital building?
I do have to agree quite a bit with Scott there. Maybe solve some questions that people, why are the lights on sometimes in it? I don't know. But yeah, it's not the city's issue. They're the property owner, so they can decide what they want to do with it.
Okay, Mike Blessum, same question.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty clear. There really isn't a lot that the city needs to do there other than making sure that we're enforcing ordinances, making sure that they're following the law, and taking care of the building the way that they need to. But outside of that, they're going to have to make their decisions. And at some point, hopefully there's a developer that's able to work with them to make a deal where something productive comes of that. But really, that's on Trinity. They got the new facility at the end of town, and now they need to do right by that building that's in downtown.
Okay, Scott, same question.
So first and foremost, I agree it's on Trinity, and I really, really hope Trinity doesn't take too long to make that decision because we're all asked this quite a bit. That's right off the busiest intersection in town. It's a massive property in town. It's a huge amount of potential. I think that the city can do is we do have some economic incentives that are available. That could potentially be a TIF zone. That could potentially be, it's currently in the Renaissance zone. I think that those are the examples of where we can look at a building that could sit there for 20 years. And, we can look at what happened with the Big M building for years, where it just sat there and they paid their taxes a little bit late every year and it wasn't done all that well, or we could help to spark that a little bit, help to incentivize it. It is in everybody's best interest in this community that building doesn't sit open for 20 years. The earlier we can do it, the better.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Rob?
Gonna echo the same thing. It's not the city's problem, it's Trinity's problem. I think they've tried to shuck the responsibility on it a little bit and try to get other people to take it over, consider doing things with it so they don't have to spend the money to tear it down and do that sort of thing. I'm wholly opposed to turning it into a TIF area or giving tax breaks to bring anything else in there. Trinity needs to deal with it. It isn't something the city needs to handle.
Okay, Mike Geetson.
If elected, my thoughts would be to find a local contractor that can turn it into a daycare and low-income housing. Right, and that would be perfect. Like, I think all the rooms that are in and all the things that, I agree, it's something that we should have, the city's role involvement shouldn't be per se, but let's find a local, somebody that wants to do something with it. It's a great spot, and I don't know, let's make a daycare and some low-income housing.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Wow. I agree that it is Trinity's problem, but I think the city can be part of the solution. I think economic development incentives could be used judiciously on that property. Right now, what we're doing is we're partnering with Trinity and trying to get federal assistance in doing an environmental survey. We don't know what's in there in terms of lead-based paint or asbestos or things like that. Until we get answers to those basic health and safety questions, we really won't know what the property is worth or not worth. My fear is it may have to be torn down. I've worked in hospitals my whole life, and they are very specialized facilities, so they don't readily lend themselves to repurposing. But I think we need to look at that carefully and, again, offer technical support to Trinity. It's primarily their responsibility, but it's a tremendous piece of property, a tremendous location, and I'd hate to see it just go by the wayside.
Okay, thank you, Steve. This will be our last question before we get to the final statements. So we start with you, Leif. What specifically would you do or have staff do to help people in our community feel like their voices aren't falling on deaf ears? So if you're elected, what specifically would you have yourself do or staff do to help people in our community feel like their voices aren't falling on deaf ears?
This is an interesting one. Well, first of all, I will be a communicator from the dais. Just plain and simple. As I said earlier, morality, or not morality, let's just say how some city staff feel right now about their job, we'll call it morale, not morality. It's an issue. Why on earth should we have a city department head messaging a citizen and inviting them to come into their office and spar in person? That citizen was me. That's one of the reasons I'm up here. Now, I don't think most people know this, but city department heads cannot be dismissed from their job by the city manager. He's somewhat powerless. In order for that to happen, it takes the city manager, the city council, and the Civil Service Commission to all agree. I think we need to correct some of the things that go on with city staff. Most of them, I'm okay with. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Leif. Mike Blessum, what specifically would you do or have city staff do to help people in the community feel like their voices aren't falling on deaf ears?
Well, I think it certainly starts with leadership. I think I mentioned before, what I had talked about with going to the legislature and communicating there and working with them on issues. Just as an example, the Broadway Circle project and the final vote that had to be taken in this chamber a couple months ago, there was no discussion from the public that night. There was no open mic. Yes, you could come during personal appearances. For me, I like the way the legislature does this, where it's open to a hearing with each of those individual issues, and people are able to come and speak their piece and interact with the city council. I would urge our council, hopefully I'll be a part of that, I would urge us to do that going forward, and to be more accountable and upfront with people and actually have an interaction. That's really what needs to happen to make sure that that works, and that leadership then will trickle down to staff. When they see that, when they see the interactions that the council and the mayor and everybody has with the public, that's going to trickle down to staff, and they're going to follow that lead.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Scott Burlingame.
Can you repeat the question, please?
For sure. What specifically would you do or have city staff do to help people in the community feel like their voices aren't falling on deaf ears?
I think it's interesting because in today's kind of world, everybody's got opinions and people don't necessarily always like it if you don't agree with them. Just because the hard part is that how do we acknowledge the fact that we hear people even if we ultimately don't agree with them? Just because you presented a position and we didn't agree with you doesn't mean we didn't hear you. And I think that's what happens sometimes. People will come forward and they'll be like, I came, stood up at the lectern there and I said this and they didn't even listen to me. Well, we did listen to you. We just happened to not agree with you because you were a voice and we heard other voices or we had our own opinions. I think it's interesting because when it comes to talking about how I'll make decisions, I've said all along that first and foremost, I'm going to listen to people. There's only a handful of items where it's like, this is an absolute, I'm going to vote this way from my heart, because most things I actually, can be persuaded on, but there's most things I'm going to listen and I'm going to pay attention to that. But the last thing I'm ever going to listen to is somebody that is coming at me strictly from some geopolitical position because that's what they were told by somebody somewhere else that they should do. I want to listen to people that live, work, and play in Minot. And I will at times be dismissive of people that come to it from a strictly political position.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Rob, same question.
Well, first, I think it has to start with a two-way conversation. And I'm going to use my experience. The very first time I talked at City Council was in February when the Broadway Circle project was being brought up. They gave the city, the residents of the city, 5 days' notice. The Minot Daily newspaper put it in the news the Wednesday before that meeting. I came in here and spoke and had my say. And they didn't ask questions of me. They let me go back and sit down, and then they had their things to say to me, some of which weren't very cordial, I guess, in my opinion. As a citizen, one of the community members, they didn't ask for my input. We didn't ask for the community's input. You're telling me you want to spend $1.4 million of our money, and you're not going to ask any of us what we think about that? That's, it can't happen that way. It has to be a two-way communication. So I think there's things we can do. You can have community forums other than like city council, where people are able to come, talk to people from the city, and then we can take those ideas back to the city council and the city manager and stuff like that. I believe there's other ways, again, one of the things I've talked about is if you're going to spend that kind of money to bail out a project that was supposed to have no taxpayer dollar in it, you have to do something where you open it up to the city or the community or the citizens to have input for 30 days. Instead of making those decisions quietly behind closed doors without ever asking us, the guys that are paying those bills, we need to open that up so people can come talk. Because I guarantee you, if we'd have opened that up 30 days prior to making that decision, there'd have been an influx of communication from the people in this community about not wanting to do that. But they didn't do that, so that's where I'd start.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike Geetson, same question. What specifically would you do or have city staff do to help people in the community feel like their voices aren't falling on deaf ears?
Well, I have mentioned earlier, and I am still a big proponent of listening, and I guess one thing I would communicate is that they don't have to suffer in silence. There's 3 spots. There's 2 incumbents, so they're going to get one fresh person that they haven't seen to represent them on city council. I hope I'm one of them. Maybe they feel like they just, if you do it, you do what you always did, you get what you always got. And maybe that's where my thought is. Maybe that's why I'm feeling apt to run, just to tell them that you're going to get something new, you're going to get something fresh. I'm not saying that anyone did a bad job, but they obviously don't feel, when Mr. Blesson mentioned earlier that 2 people showed up out of all the, why is that? Why do people not, do they feel like they can't make a difference? Do they feel like no one's, obviously they do, the proof's in the pudding, right? 50,000 people show up, how many people show up to vote? And so you got to give them a reason to get fired up again, and someone's, one of us, like I said, is going to join the council, so.
Okay, thank you. Mike, Steve.
4 quick points. The first one is I think it's important to respond to emails and telephone calls. I don't know how many emails I've gotten from people who've said, I've sent this out to everybody and you're the only one who's ever responded. So I think personal responsibility for reaching back to people when they contact us. Second point I'd like to make is that this is one place where I think we do need to spend money on consultants, is designing good, accurate, objective scientific surveys of the community, which is something, again, I've pushed for, and I'm glad we finally have, and of our employees, so we know what they're thinking, so we don't just listen to the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And this is where good consultants developing good questionnaires can be very helpful to us. The third point I'd make is that we need to be welcoming of input, not just tolerating it. And I wanted to give credit to the mayor, who's done a lot to encourage people to speak at council meetings. I've pushed, and I think he's allowed certainly, more informal dialogue where we talk to each other as Scott or Lisa or whoever and said, well, Alderman so-and-so. And it bothers me when staff come up and say, well, Alderman so-and-so and Mayor so-and-so. No, we're co-workers. I refer to people by their first names. I want them to refer to me by my first name. We're all in this together, and same way with citizens. So I think increasing that dialogue, increasing that interaction, and making it more informal at council meetings. It's pretty intimidating to stand up there at that dais sometimes. So maybe sitting down here more together. And the final thing I'd say is, echoing Scott Burlingame, is that there's a difference between listening and agreeing. I think we have an obligation to listen, but we don't necessarily have an obligation to agree. We do have an obligation to explain our decisions and why we're moving in a certain direction, why we're voting a certain direction. But I think there's a fine line between those two. I think we listen generally fairly well. Could we listen better? Yes, we could. But again, some mutual respect, that just because we don't agree with you with what you want doesn't mean we're not listening.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And I think, Scott, you finish us off on this question. Yeah, for sure. What specifically would you do or have city staff do to help people in the community feel their voices aren't falling on deaf ears?
I would agree with Mike. It starts with leadership, and it is a two-way communication. I've addressed city council several times over the last year and a half, and I guess the majority of the time, I would say I got shot down. I got comments that were made that I didn't feel very good about. And it wasn't a two-way discussion. I had one alderman reach out to me after one of those, and we actually had a discussion. He referred to it at one of the city council meetings. It wasn't the same discussion that I remember we had. So, and I think we have to have a communication with the citizens. And again, like I said, part of listening is understanding what the people are saying. And if you talk to someone or you get an email from someone and what their opinion is, and they get up there and vote and it's completely different from what you talk to them about, that's not leadership.
Okay, thank you, Scott. We're up against 2 hours now, and again, I appreciate the candidates taking an extra 30 minutes tonight to answer more of our questions. Thank you to everyone for attending tonight. This is your 30 seconds of prep time. Leif, we're going to go with you and go down the road this way because we started with Mike last time. So each have a 1 minute, up to 1 minute to have your closing statement. But I want to remind everyone, we have one more of these candidate forums coming up tomorrow, same time, same location. We'll do it online again. This is the Minot School Board candidates. I believe that 6 of the 7 candidates are able to make it for those open positions. So that will be tomorrow. That will be the last of our forums. And then a reminder, it's June 11th is the election. So please go vote. It's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as I understand it. And you can, if you're not in town that day and can't vote in person, you can get a ballot ahead of time. That's through Ward County, if you didn't know already. Again, thank you to our candidates. I'll give you each up to a minute to give your closing statements. And like I said, Leif, we'll go with you first, and we'll go down the road this way. So Leif.
As a former hockey coach, I'm not going to bore you with a long locker room speech. I think we've all heard enough out of me. I'm just going to give it to Scott.
Fastest one ever. Okay, Scott.
Oh, that was good. We have to, as I said before, we have to get more community involvement. We need to listen what the citizens are saying, what they want, and I will do that. I want engagement. I want people to show up at the city council meetings. We need to listen to what the people want, and we absolutely have to do something with property tax. We didn't have a lot of talk on that, but we need to lower them, and actually we need to eliminate them.
Okay, Steve, your turn.
Wow. I guess my summary would be that I've tried really hard for the past 16 years to serve the needs of all the citizens and not to put my own personal agenda or some political party or clique or faction ahead of that. I think that my primary credentials would be experience knowing how the city runs, listening to people, advocating for more transparency, more accountability, more efficiency, and more effectiveness in terms of city government. Hopefully I have a decent sense of judgment in terms of trying to balance all these needs, because it is a challenge to balance the needs of 50,000 people who often have divergent points of view. I would appreciate the opportunity to continue serving the citizens of Minot, and I want to thank everyone for listening, watching, and being here tonight and participating to the extent that they have.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mike Geetson.
In closing, I'd just like to say, please don't let my lack of detail or specifics dissuade you on thinking that I'm not passionate, because that's not true. Like I said, I'm that honest person. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, but I want to see it at the table. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm not for everyone, but my slogan, I guess, is right time, right choice. It's the right time. I'm happy to do this now. I think a fresh set of eyes certainly wouldn't hurt, and that's why I asked for a vote on Election Day.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Rob.
Well, I just want to say, kind of what Scott was saying, we need to listen to the community. We haven't listened to the community in the last 5 to 10 years. Property taxes are a huge issue. Some of the morale issues within the city departments are a big issue. So if I'm elected, I want to get on and I want to start to affect some of the change that we're all hoping to see. I think all of us are in the same boat. We live in Minot. We love Minot. We want Minot to be a great place. but there's some things we need to do to get it back on the right path, because I don't believe it's there right now. I think we're heading in the wrong direction. And so hopefully I can be a part of that and help affect some of that change.
Okay, thank you. Scott, you're next.
So there's somebody I forgot to thank that's pretty important. I'd like to thank my family for allowing me to serve. That there's not a council meeting that goes by or a meeting that I'm in or when I'm upstairs in the office doing work that I probably couldn't be spending with my wife or my kids or my grandkids. And they sacrifice so that I can serve the people of Minot, and I want to make sure I thank them for that. As I said earlier, I'm not a traditional politician. In fact, I'm sort of turned off by traditional politics because I feel like it's more about trying to, put somebody else down to make yourself look better, and I want to solve problems. And we do have problems that we have to solve, but we can fix Minot with what's good about Minot. What's good about Minot is the people in this community. What's good about Minot is the possibilities in this community and the opportunities within this community. I am blessed to have the opportunity to serve over the last year and a half or whatever it is. And I'm asking for your opportunity to continue the hard work because there's a lot of hard work left to do. We can do more on childcare. We can do more on housing. We can do more on improving workforce in our community. And we can do more to fix our aging infrastructure. None of this is going to be easy. It's going to take experience. It's going to take bringing people together. And it's going to take working hard. And I'm dedicated to doing that. And I'd appreciate your vote on June 11th.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Mike Blessum, finish us off, please.
So Mark, thank you for hosting. We appreciate that very much. Brecca, the Chamber, this is a great event. These are the things that need to happen to have an informed populace, and that's important. Thank you to my opponents. It's been a good discussion tonight. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and that's been very good. I guess I would just say that I think I offer a new outlook and a new vision for the city. A new path that we can go down that is focused on what the city can do well, the things that fit there very well and that the city can do well, but also on making sure that we're evaluating the things that we do want to change. Just to kind of sum that up, I have a friend that is a city council candidate in another city in North Dakota, and she was on a radio show the other day, and one of the things that she said is that it's important for her to get the finances of the city in order before pushing for additional city finance growth. I think, man, could that apply any more to Minot? I think that makes so much sense when she said that. She stated that they may have to say no for a while until they can get things under control. Man, what a profound way of looking at things. And I think we all need to have that in mind, and we need to be thinking about that. As we look to the future, our city faces a lot of challenges. We've got, we're finishing up NAS hopefully over the coming years, flood protection. Man, we heard a great presentation yesterday about what the impacts could look like from the Sentinel program and what that's going to bring to Minot Air Force Base and the missions that we have on our base. What huge opportunity for this city. I would love to be a part of helping us set a vision and a direction for that, and I would ask for everybody's vote.
Okay, thank you. And thank you on behalf of the Minot Area Chamber EDC to each of the candidates for being here tonight. Thank you again to those who are joining us online and in person, and have a good night.
you